Welcome back. I'm Daisy Martin, an instructor for this course. In the prior video, we defined performance assessment as asking students to think and produce and demonstrate learning through work authentic to the discipline or real world. We also took a brief look at one example of curriculum-embedded performance assessment. In this video, we will outline and discuss the 4 guiding principles for this course. We will return again and again to these principles during our time together, as they communicate essential aspects of developing quality performance assessments and using such assessments effectively in the classroom. Our first principle is that performance assessment targets skills and knowledge that matter, and preparing for performance assessment improves skills and knowledge that matter. I mean, who among us went into education because they wanted to focus on instructional goals that didn't matter? And yet, I know that some of you have questioned if external dictates regarding testing and teaching have limited your abilities to focus on essential skills and knowledge that your students should be practicing, learning, and mastering. Today, many talk of preparing students for college, career, and citizenship. In the introduction of the Common Core Standards, the authors speak of defining college and career readiness as, quote, skills and understandings that students are expected to demonstrate that have wide applicability outside the classroom or workplace, and that are, quote, essential to both private deliberation and responsible citizenship in a democratic republic. The Common Core Standards have been written with a focus on skills and knowledge that matter to a student's future, their future lives, work, and education. Standards, such as the Next Generation Science Standards, Common Core State Standards, and C3 Framework for Social Studies, define skills and knowledge that matter to preparing students for their futures. We will use those standards to help us assess what matters. We will also be focusing on what some call higher order thinking skills. If we want to assess only students' recall of specific facts, performance assessment is not a good fit. That might be better done using a multiple choice test. But if we want to see what students can do with those facts, can they use them to make a compelling argument? Can they explain them in the context of a new concept so that listeners understand that concept? Tasks where students use higher order thinking skills, such as literary analysis and research, designing scientific experiments, modeling mathematical problems, and evaluating historical sources and using evidence, these tasks are more suited to performance assessment. All of these tasks require students to use their existing and developing skills and apply what they know and can do to a new situation. We are focusing on higher order thinking skills that can transfer to new situations. Different kinds of assessments are more suited to assessing different competencies. We will focus on curriculum-embedded performance assessments that show how students think as well as what they know. Let's hear Scale Director for Research and Development, Dr. Ruth Chung Wei, speak about this.
Traditional formats of standardized tests typically are limited in what they can measure simply because of their format. Selected response items, short answers, those are the typical formats in which current state assessment systems use and rely on to measure what students know. But they're very limited in what they can assess in terms of what students truly understand and what they can do with their understandings, how well they're able to apply what they know in real, authentic situations and problems. And so performance assessments can actually broaden what it is that we're measuring about what students can know and can do with the knowledge that they have.
Our second principle is that performance assessment is assessment for and as learning. Again, here's Dr. Chung Wei.
As students are actually working on the performance assessments, they're learning something through them. They're reading articles, or they're doing an investigation, or they're collecting data. All of those things, the activity of actually executing and engaging in the performance assessment is in itself a learning activity for kids, but it's also providing learning opportunities for teachers because it gives them real-time information about what's effective in their instruction. what's effective in the design of the performance assessment. So overall, I feel that performance assessments can have the potential to spur learning and not just measure it.
Some assessments are just of learning. Their sole purpose is to measure whether a student knows or understands something specific. And while performance assessments do need to yield reliable, actionable data about student performance, we purposefully talk of performance assessments as assessments for and as learning. Performance assessments are not only an opportunity to gauge student learning, they're an opportunity for students to learn. In the campaign ad project, introduced in the previous video, students were scored on their final ad so they could learn more about what they did well and not as well regarding the target proficiencies. But they were also actively learning during the entire development of that ad. They learned more about contemporary political issues and campaigns, and they also practiced and improved broader skills that are essential to literacy, research, communication, and collaboration. They also learned about how to learn as they reflected and gave each other feedback on emerging ideas and developed and refined their final products. Performance assessments are also for teacher learning. Teachers learn about students' strengths regarding targeted skills and knowledge, and they learn more about their students' areas for growth. They have opportunities to identify student misconceptions and gaps in their understanding. Teachers learn about the impact of their instruction on student learning and what skills they need to teach or reteach. Performance assessment provides opportunities for feedback to students and teachers about how they are doing and what to do better. Our third principle is that performance assessment links curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Too often, we think of assessment as an independent event, one that occurs at the end of a unit and whose primary purpose is to produce a unit test grade. We add a grade to the gradebook, and then we move on to the next topic and unit. Quality performance assessments push us to see assessment as integrally linked to curriculum and instruction. This means that if we're to ask students to produce a content-rich and effective work product for an assessment, then we need to ask questions like, what skills, background knowledge, content understandings do students need to know to complete this assessment? What do we need to teach? What curricular resources will support that instruction? Performance assessments need to be designed so that the skills and knowledge necessary to complete them can be taught and learned. They should not be assessing students' test-taking skills, nor what they came into your class already knowing and being able to do. Our fourth and final principle is that performance assessment is learning by doing. Let's hear how educator Justin Wells thinks about this.
I think a practice that helped me deepen my teaching and make it more rooted in the philosophy of performance assessment was thinking about the act of creation as the highest form of understanding. When I'm designing a unit, okay, what's the creative what are they creating from scratch that's applying what they just learned? And once I applied that sort of conceptual thinking to my curricular design, I felt like I was getting better results, and the kids were having these deep and memorable learning experiences.
As young people construct answers, create presentations, take actions, explain data, and pose inquiry questions, they learn. It is in this doing that the learning lies. This principle will also guide our course. We will ask you to do and to produce, specifically to plan and pilot a curriculum-embedded performance assessment that has been tailored for your own teaching context. Through that work and the surrounding conversation, we will learn about designing and using performance assessments that serve larger purposes of creating an equitable and reliable assessment system that's focused on nurturing students' higher order thinking abilities, preparing them for their futures, and opening doors to what that future can hold. This has been a brief introduction to our 4 key principles. They are that performance assessment targets skills and knowledge that matter. That performance assessment is assessment for and as learning. Performance assessment links curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And that performance assessment is learning by doing. We will further detail and complicate these principles as we continue our work together. Our next video features Scale Executive Director Ray Pashone discussing the current policy context of performance assessment and teachers' role within it. Thank you.